and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. Well, good morning, guys. How are you doing? You guys are just about to go back to, what is that thing? School. School is cool, right? You got, was it one more week till you go back? 2 weeks? Next Monday. You have 2 more days. Depends on your school. Wow. All kinds of stuff. School is great. I hope you have a great school year as it comes up. What grade will you be in? 4th grade. Okay. 1st grade. Okay. 4th grade. 2 4th graders. 4th grade. 5th grade. Very good. Well, we've got an interesting story about Israel coming out of Egypt. And I don't know, do you remember any of that story in the Bible? Israel they were slaves in Egypt, and God sent Moses to go to the king of Egypt called a Pharaoh, and he said to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh said, "Sure thing." He said, "No way. I've got people who work for me for free. That's a pretty good deal. I'm not letting them go." And so Moses, as God directed, all kinds of, it was like God fought against Egypt. At one point, all the waters turned into blood. Can you imagine that? It gets a little hard to get a drink of water, right? At one point, tons and tons of frogs came out of the river, and frogs were in everybody's houses. Frogs were jumping into everybody's cooking. Frogs were in everybody's beds. Ugh. There were lice that infested everybody. There were boils, painful skin things. And there was another time in which a whole bunch of the cattle died. And there was huge hailstorms that destroyed plants, and there were locusts that came in and ate the crops. It's pretty awful. And finally, when it was all done, when Moses said, "Let my people go," Pharaoh said, "Oh yeah, get out of here." But one more time, there were 10 of these plagues, they're called. There were 10 of them. One more time, even after they left, Pharaoh changed his mind. So Israel's already left Egypt. They're headed out toward the land of promise. They're going through the wilderness, and Pharaoh changes his mind. So he gets his chariots, which were like heavy, they were like tanks in the ancient world. That was, they didn't have the kind of military technology we have now, but chariots were like tanks. And Israel didn't have tanks. Israel didn't have an army, really. They didn't have weapons. And he had his 600 best chariots, and then he had all his other chariots, hundreds and hundreds of them, and thousands of soldiers, and they went out to chase Israel down. And Israel, meanwhile, had stopped by the sea, and to get where they were going, they had to get to the other side of the sea. And so now they're stuck, and they see Egypt coming, and they know Egypt's power, and after all they've seen God do to deliver them and get them out of Egypt, they're still scared. And they say to Moses, "Moses, is it because there aren't enough graves in Egypt that you brought us out here to die?" They were scared to death, and they were complaining. And Moses said to them, "Do not be afraid." Now, that's always easier to say than to do. But Moses gave them some instructions. Moses said, "Do not be afraid. Stand still. The Lord will fight for you." And the angel of God who had accompanied them in this cloud moved behind them. So it was between them and the Egyptian army and chariots. And all through the night, the Egyptians couldn't see anything because it was darkness on one side, and for Israel, there was the light of a fire on the other side. And And Israel could see and Egypt couldn't, and they couldn't get close. And God told Moses, take your staff, like a big walking stick. Take your staff, stretch it out over the sea. Hold your staff out. You've got an imaginary staff. Hold it out. Come on, join me. Hold it out. He says, hold it out over the sea. And God sent winds, and the sea parted and separated, and there was dry ground through the middle of the sea. And Israel started to walk through the sea and got to the other side, and Moses walked through the sea, and he gets to the other side, and Egypt sees the path through the sea, and the army and the chariots. You see your Nana? She's right there. The army and the chariots start to rush through. And God tells Moses, hold your staff over the sea one more time. Hold it out one more time. And this time, instead of the waters separating, what do you think they did? The waters came back together. And the words of the old song, Pharaoh's army got drowned. And God delivered Israel. And remember what Moses told them when they were afraid? He said, do not be afraid. Stand still. The Lord will fight for you. Will you guys pray with me? I invite you to repeat after me. Dear God, thank you for taking care of us. Thank you for fighting for us. Help us not to be afraid. Amen. Amen. Now, we have some worksheets for you. I want to invite you guys